Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. So today's cards that I'm going to be creating, I am going to use both the positive and the negative to create cards today. I think somewhere along the line I had perhaps a subscriber or someone left me a comment on a YouTube video about using both the positive and negative, and originally I thought I would try and do it on one card, but this morphed into two cards, and so I guess that's another challenge for another day. Now this die set here is the Curvy Leaves die set from Pinkfresh Studio. I have a whole range of videos on my channel that use this die set. This is one of my favorites. If I had to make a list of favorites, this would definitely be on it. It has three different sizes, kind of a small, a medium, and then a really large leaf or piece of foliage, and I am going to use just these two here today. Now as I work through this card, I challenge you to think about what kind of card I am making today, because I really end up loving this design, and I had a friend in mind who this was for at the time, and I think I was going for more of the subtle kind of hints rather than in your face, so you can see along the way if you can kind of pick up on it. But I have cut out a couple of those leaves and then one of the smaller ones. Now this background here was one that I made from this gorgeous gingham stamp, and these are some pigment inks, and I made a whole lot of backgrounds, and these are the scraps that I cut off from those backgrounds. So I saved them all because they were so gorgeous and I knew I would want to do something with them. And today is the day. So I will post a link to that video where I created all of those cards for that background there on the right. But I really love that color combination and that stamp. But anyhow, here I am sorting these into kind of colors, and I'm going for sort of the blues and the greens, and then the purples in the middle, and then the kind of yellows and oranges to the left. Now I am just doing this roughly and trying not to be super pedantic about it. I have a couple of little pieces of copy paper, like computer paper, really thin paper. I have popped down some liquid glue, and I like to use the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. That's my go-to glue, liquid glue, pretty much for everything. And then I'm just doing what everybody does with their strips. I'm popping these all together. I have got just a couple of little, like a smaller piece of paper here. So I knew what I needed to fit behind the leaves, and so that's how I came up with this small piece here. And then I'm layering these up. I also have a couple of pieces of gold cardstock, and then halfway through I cut off all the edge pieces so that I can reuse them again and again, because I didn't have a super whole lot that I was working with. But you could recreate this whole card, or both of these cards, if you had any kind of foliage dies, or you might later on decide to do, I was thinking about doing this with hearts as well, would look really good, but I really like the foliage idea, so that's why I went with the leaves, and any scraps you have lying around. And if you don't have scraps, make them. We all have coloured paper or backgrounds that you've created, and sometimes I look at a background that I've created and think, I don't think I can find a use for this at the minute. How else could I use it? And sometimes that involves cutting it up into separate little pieces, and that way I'm able to kind of see it differently and use it differently. So anyhow, I have got my three pieces here, and then I have, these are the scrapbook.com really skinny foam strips. Now you get a whole lot of these in a package, and there are a whole lot of kind of sheets of these as well. So I'm going to pop these in and around the leaves, and these are good because you can maneuver them in all those little kind of spaces. I make sure that I have the back well supported. Although I know that this card won't be going through the mail, I still want to make sure that there's kind of no weak spots or no dents where it might go in a little bit. So I am just going to make sure that I've got plenty of foam on the back there. And yes, I could have made this into a shaker card, but that was not my goal at all for this card. But I do want to make sure I can fit each piece behind these leaves here. So I'm just using the positive to make sure that I can kind of get the right size and it's not going to go over into those other two larger leaves. So it doesn't matter what it looks like from the back. I promise you everything will be all covered up. And I wanted to keep the stripes going relatively kind of straight horizontally. So I didn't want to put them at any funny angles. And anything that might be overhanging there, I'm just going to kind of bend it back and then trim it off with my little cutter bee scissors. And that way I have the purple is going to be the little one in the middle, and then the blues is going to be the blues and greens to the, well, this is the right, but it will be the left on the card, and then the other one will be the oranges and the yellows. And anywhere that I thought it needed it, I just added a little bit of extra liquid glue so that everything was definitely held down in place. Now, I really love that extra little bit of gold there. I think it kind of steps the card up just a little bit rather than just using plain scraps. And then here is where you're finally going to see where I went with this card and what kind of card this is going to be. This is a really simple card to recreate with so many different things that you have in your stash that you could use to recreate this, either similar or slightly different. And if you are inspired to try this card, then I would love to see them. So the best place to do that is over in my Facebook group. We have an amazing community of like-minded crafters over there. So I will leave a link to that down in the description box below, but the group is called Come Crafting with Natasha, and you can search us or just use the link down below to find it. Now, to finish off this card, I am really liking the simple drawn lines here, and they're kind of not straight on purpose, because I know if I want to draw straight lines, they won't work straight, and if I did want straight ones, I would use a ruler, but I really like drawing 2 or 3 kind of lines that kind of wiggle all over each other, and it's a really simple look, but it just takes this card to the next level and gives it a really nice frame as well. This is, of course, a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, and I had cut the card panel down to be 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and then that little black frame just really finishes it off. I have popped up the sentiment on a little bit of foam tape, and this is Welcome to the World, Sweet Baby. Now, I really love this. It's kind of a really subtle way of having a couple of parents and the little baby that they are expecting. So to me, this is kind of like version 1 of the card, and I love this card, so I wasn't sure how I was going to come up with something that I really liked just as much using the leftover pieces. So these are the die cuts that I cut out from the first card. So I can see that gorgeous little bit of gold there, and I wanted to find a way to kind of do a similar card, but obviously I don't have the scraps anymore, I didn't have the gold strips anymore, so I'm going to need to do something a little bit different, and this is a whole different technique, but you end up achieving, I want to say similar, but pretty different results, I guess, different mediums that you are working with. So those little bits of gold in here is what I really want to recreate, and I was thinking about how I might do that, and looking at some of the colors, I just went through my Distress Oxide collection, and these are the ones that I picked out to be similar to the oranges and reds that I had used there. Now, I don't need to use all of these, there's far too many here, and just as a side note, I do not have the full range of Distress Oxides. I don't even have half of the range that is available of the Distress Oxides, and I know that I get asked really often about which colors would you recommend purchasing first if you just need to purchase a select few to begin with, say 6, 8, 10, 12 ink pads, and what would you go for first? So if you're interested in seeing a video about that, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will put one of those together. It's definitely one of the questions that I get asked most often. Now, when it comes to the blues and the greens, again, I just got out what I kind of thought looked similar. I am using my non-stick mat. This is a really handy size mat, and it's the only one I use. I actually got rid of all my other ones. This is actually the replacement mat for the Tim Holtz media mat, the glass media mat. However, I don't own the glass media mat, and it's not something that I need at all in my little craft space. But the replacement mat is the perfect size non-stick sheet for me. It has kind of that silicone coating on the back, which means that it doesn't curl up and it can't move around on my desk. So it's nice and still and put in place, but it is quite small and big enough to do all of the kind of water techniques and the inking techniques that I need to do, but it doesn't take up a whole lot of space in my craft room. So all of these products that I'm using today, if they are still available, I will link them in the description box below in case you would like to check them out. But all I'm doing is dipping these die cuts into the ink that I have smushed down onto the non-stick sheet, and then I dry them in between, and sometimes I'll smush them again just to get some of those colors layering on top of each other. Now, I did go ahead and die cut out a few more of these. So I'm going to actually stack these up to give them some dimension. In the last card, I die cut them out and was able to use foam to sink them down lower, and that gave me a little bit of dimension on the card. But this time round, if I put them straight down on the card, it was a little bit too plain for my liking, so I'm going to create some dimension, which I definitely could use little bits of foam to go on the back, but just because these leaves are a little bit delicate, the stem certainly going down the middle is a little bit delicate, I decided that I would just die cut these out a few times in some thick white cardstock, and then I'm using that non-stick matte again, and I have put down some of that liquid glue, the Ranger Multi-Medium and the matte finish glue, and I am just going to squirt a little bit out. I have a little makeup sponge and I just dab it gently over the die cut, and then that way I'm able to line it up behind this one and I get a nice dimensional thick piece of die cut. Now, although these leaves do look really gorgeous, this is how I'm going to get some of that gold foil going on. Now, this is I think this is called Smart Glue, and this is from scrapbook.com. This is their brand of glue, and this is a tacky glue, so it dries tacky. Now, there are many tacky glues out there. There are lots of companies who do them. You may already have one at home that dries tacky. Another good one is the Tombow glues. The Tombow, I think it's the green one, is really good for this as well. And I am just using the nozzle to pop a tiny little bit of glue here and there around the leaf die cuts. So I am just putting on a little bit, and you want to wait until this completely dries. Now, this would not work if I were to use my matte medium, my Ranger matte medium that's in my glue bottles, because it does not dry tacky. So you need to make sure that it dries tacky. And again, there are lots of other products out there that will work for when you want to do foiling and things. But that little glue bottle it's really cheap. It's a small glue bottle, and I keep it with my foils just for this purpose. So I really liked that sentiment that I did before. This was from the Sentiment Strips 2 pack from Altenew, and it says, again, welcome to the world, sweet baby. I'm going to use a little bit of fun foam. This is just like kids fun foam. I only had some grey left, but that is going to work just fine. It's light enough that you don't get distracted from the sides or anything. And then I'm going to do the same black lines around the outside. I probably should have done this before I put on the craft foam, but I was not thinking, so I'm able to do it afterward just fine, and it probably helps with the wonky lines anyhow. So I've got those all around, and then here is the part where we're going to add the foil. So you can see now that it is a little bit shiny in the spots. It's kind of hard to show on camera, but all you need to do is make sure it's completely clear so you see no more white, and you can gently pop down the foil on top. I am again going to go with some of the gold, and little bits of the foil will stick wherever that glue was placed. So I am just going to quickly run this over all 3 of the leaves, and I can pretty much just reuse the same little piece of foil up the top there, and you can see I get nice little pieces of kind of scratchy foil here, there, and everywhere, just enough to kind of catch your eye when the card is moving about, but not too much to be overwhelming or kind of overtake the colors that are behind it or around it. So that was my plan anyhow. I'm using liquid glue to pop this down onto the same size card base. Again, this is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. And then I'm going to lay these out and pop these in pretty much exactly the same design as I had the first card. So although I did use the positive and negatives from that original card, I know that I didn't use them on the same card, so that is, as I said, maybe another challenge for another day. But let me know which card that you kind of lean towards more. Is it the first card that we created with using the strips, or is it the second card where we used the actual die cuts and we went more down the inky road? Let me know in the comment section down below. I always find these things really interesting. I must say I love these cards both very much. Even though we used really different techniques to create them, they did end up looking pretty similar, and I was really happy with the result of these cards. I had so much fun making them, and it's really nice to kind of just sit down and really enjoy creating something that is in front of you and enjoy the process of it. So I had a whole lot of fun today. Thank you so much for joining me on this process. I love the way that the gold foil here just catches the light a little bit. I really am glad that I made the decision to pop that gold foil on, but that is my 2 cards for today. So thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. If you liked these kind of videos, then please consider subscribing to my channel. That would mean a lot to me. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.